Hello, this is another edition of the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm Coach Red Pill, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Benway. Dr. Benway, it's a pleasure. How are you?
Jovial.
Jovial? Just one word, jovial. Well, we do these things, right, usually in my morning, Dr. Benway's evening, because right now it's just past 6 in the morning, Ukraine time, and it's, just past 10 p.m. your time, right?
About 10:30.
Yeah. So I'm trying to catch up on the news, and you're exhausted from the news. So what is the news of the day? Please tell me.
Oh, well, there's so many things to talk about. So just to start off with light frisson, some appetizers. Everybody happens to know that I think Mr. Trump found a candidate, of course, for his Supreme Court pick, Mr. Kavanaugh, one of the top candidates as expected. The best part about this whole story, well, two things to me are the best part. One, all of the little releases, news items, and protests that were happening afterwards saying, we fucking despise Trump's nominee and blah, 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 blah. And the errors that were done in the quick announcement of that, so you could tell it was fill in the blank. Yeah. Like, I forgot what it was, like the League of Women Voters or some stupid place like that was like, it's probably not the League of Women Voters, but they say we
unanimously oppose this nominee.
Oppose the nominee of XX. Yeah, literally, exactly. It's like insert brackets, insert name here was exactly what kind of happened. Yeah. Another one was they had Kavanaugh's name but kept referring to him as she, meaning that they thought it was going to be Barrett. All of that's fun. So that's entertaining because I think it's a wonderful, like, we didn't give a shit what he said. We had our protest planned. We don't really know what the candidates believe on anything, but we know we don't like it. And my favorite part, though, unrelated, but, well, tangentially related to that, is we now start the how long does Ginsburg have game.
Yeah. Turn on the death clock, right, for Ginsburg. Okay. No, the Kavanaugh thing, it's goddamn funny. I heard about the nomination from Dick Morris, as a matter of fact, late last night, my last night. He put out a video about it, and he called it political jujitsu. And I recommend Dick Morris. I don't know, Benway, if you follow him, but he's got a little YouTube channel, and he puts out these little snippets that are like 2 to 4 minutes long. And they are so on the money insofar as, his analysis, his political analysis, best political analysis around. Because the guy, he's an insider. He knows how the game is played. And just masterful political strategist. And, he was saying that this nomination is political jujitsu because the guy is less conservative than Gorsuch. And, the guy's squeaky clean, right? And by the way, Benway, did you watch the press conference when he introduced his family and thanked his family? I mean, come on, he came across as adorable. I don't know if that was all staged or not. But he came across as just absolutely just the nicest guy in the world, right? And his 2 lovely daughters and his wife seemed to be like a lovely person, right? And you can tell that it might have been staged, but it was clear that he and his kids had a very good relationship. What?
Well, I mean, I think it was clear it was staged in part because I remember people reacting even before the announcement was made. It was like an hour or so before the announcement. Mm-hmm. The White House issued like a little preview video where it was literally like a tracking shot to the podium where the announcement would be made with dramatic music. And, of course, it was typically, conservative Inc. commentators who always were saying, when did this become a reality show? Yeah. But it was the same commentators who
Ben Shapiro.
For days, but there was the same commentators who for days were saying, it's going to be this, or it's going to be that. It's going to be that. In other words, they were already acting like it was a reality show. So to me, it's like, stop pretending otherwise. Someone just made it very apparent what you were doing. Yeah. You were as petty as the rest of us. Get in the fucking line and enjoy your little program.
Yeah, but you think it was staged or not?
I'm pretty sure Kavanaugh isn't faking his feelings with his family or Trump, doing anything like that. Certainly, it has dramatic pull, and I think they were aware of that. So, if you want to call that staged, fair enough. But I don't think it's staged in like the sense that it was fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it might have been even prepared. Well, obviously, his speech was prepared because he had that crack that his daughter who likes sports and likes to read, and his other daughter who likes sports and likes to talk. It was like, it was, he obviously had prepared that joke, but there was a vibe that it was genuine affection among that family. And so it's going to be very hard for the left to fling shit at the guy. And doesn't he The other thing I understand is that, he's a big Catholic, and he does all sorts of community service and mentorship of underprivileged children, and helping, feeding homeless people. How the hell are you going to tar and feather such a man as a Nazi? Okay, I find it hard to believe, and I think it's only going to alienate more and more people. And I think that the Democratic Party is going to drink the Kool-Aid on this. So,
they've already drunk the Kool-Aid throughout the day. It's like the typical cast of the yokels, from Chuck Schumer through Elizabeth Warren, pick your poison, have all said, this is gonna be bad because he's really going to destroy our rights, such as our right to kill a baby.
Yeah,
which should be as cheap as a McDonald's fast food menu item.
Did you see that joke? That what's her face? The one who was at the Foreign Press Association dinner, right?
I forget her name, but she always sounds like a screeching animal, and I can't stand her. But I think it's funny because she sounds like this. Sorry, it's very personal.
Well, okay, audience. To those of you who don't know Benway, he's a very buttoned-down kind of guy, right? Nice suits kind of guy. Tied properly with a proper dimple. Our kind of guy. And so when he does these impressions, they're fucking funny. Okay, it's the juxtaposition of it. That was a really good impression, by the way. But look, I think that these people are fucking insane, and reducing abortion to a McDonald's. That was so distasteful. I was watching that clip, right? And a few people were clapping, and then everybody would clap whenever the, applause sign would go up. But it felt as if the audience was cringing because, look, even if you are pro-abortion, you cannot be, fucking celebrating it. You cannot be, that for me, obviously, is the moral point that if you are cringing about abortion, then there must be something inherently wrong with it. Because nobody cringes about an appendicitis, for instance. Nobody cringes when they take out a gallstone or some shit like that, which in terms of mass is a hell of a lot more than a fetus. Nobody, bats an eye at that. You don't have, a gallstone v. Wade, at the Supreme Court, right? So obviously there is something there. And so to make fun of it like this, it's so trivialized it. And so it made people look bad, it seemed to me. And I'm wondering if they're just going to continue on this path to destruction, because it's the left going insane. Or is that just me?
Well, the swing of the tone that the left has towards abortion is interesting, because it has been kind of pendulum-like over the years.
Right.
Before it was, in the early stages, it was always more along the lines of, what was it? Safe, legal, and rare,
Right.
Or at the very least, like that. A more recent iteration was like that too. In the 70s, it went to like basically the dialogue you often heard, not exclusively, but it did come up regularly, was, basically there is no such thing as this, baby life whatsoever. They treated it almost like, I believe in some dialogue they said they referred to the child like it was a tumor.
Right.
That they had the right to remove, as if, it was some disease that was coming to get them. So that was the height of that, rhetoric, and Roe v. Wade obviously came in 72, I think. 71, 72, 73, something.
Yeah, let me check, yeah. And?
But going into the 80s and in the 90s, it went back again to that calm sort of like, we just want it safe. We don't want anybody to come to harm. Don't you think about the life of the woman and the mother and all of that kind of thing. Now we're all back to, let's get in a skimpy outfit, go to McDonald's, and like take the salad tongs and let's rip it out, boys. She even was joking in the commentary about like how she had some sort of joke. It's like before, the doctors that are your favorite go-to event for getting rid of the baby was the stairs. Falling down the stairs, and then she said, "That's the rewrite. Originally, it was coat hanger." And I'm just thinking, "Oh Jesus Christ, you're really gonna bring that up?"
Oh man,
all of the mutilations that people would go through in order to get rid of this shit, and you could tell. I mean, to be fair, I'm pretty sure there were enough people in the audience legitimately laughing because that's their point of view. But she had like a backup band going in her skit. And I was looking on the face of the backup band, and at least one guy, I think it was if I remember correctly, was a biggish black guy. I could be wrong.
Okay.
That guy didn't look like he was smiling. I mean, yeah, sure, he's busy blowing his trumpet. But, that guy didn't look like he's having a good time.
No.
And I'm pretty sure there were plenty of people there who were not having a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good indicator. The band, the reaction of the band, of the faces of the band. Yeah, yeah, because those guys are pros and they're gonna play whatever they have to play, whatever the venue. But yeah, they must have been like fucking uncomfortable. And the thing is, see, also black people do not culturally align very well with the Democratic Party, with the left wing of the Democratic Party. Uh, I don't think that the black wing is ever going to detach. Uh, I still don't quite understand why. Well, I do sort of understand. It's the whole notion of free stuff. If somebody's promising you free stuff, of course you're going to vote for them. And you're not going to think to yourself that this free stuff has to be paid for somehow. And it seems to me that a large swath of the population just, will always vote for the party that gives them free stuff. And so be it. It's like the Latinos who start to rise in the socioeconomic hierarchy, who start to realize how hard it is to make money. They're the ones who start voting Republican. Right, so look, I think that the lefties doing this thing, it seems increasingly clear that they're just going to double down, and I think also that when they lose in 2018, they're just going to blame it on the fact that they weren't leftist enough, that they weren't pure enough, and I think it's going to get worse, and I think that the online hysteria of the left, of them, screeching autistically at everybody and calling everybody a Nazi, I think it's actually going to get worse now that I start to think about it. Now that I'm realizing how crazy they're getting over Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh is milk toast. He's like he's just such a middle of the road guy. I would actually be concerned that the son of a bitch might turn liberal. Okay, I'm calling it an SOB. I'm not. I don't mean in any disrespect.
You think he's gonna be? You think he's gonna pull a David Souter?
Please not another David Souter. I mean, that guy. Jesus Christ. He wasn't married, right? He's not married, right?
He came close, but he never did. No.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Guys who don't get married. Yeah. They don't know shit. They turn lefty. They turn. Yeah, I'm looking him up now. Has never married, though he was once engaged. Yeah. Mm-mm. Yeah, what?
Yeah, so with regards to Kavanaugh, I ultimately don't know 100%. I've seen both ways. I've seen some indicators suggesting he's just slightly to the left of Clarence Thomas, meaning he would be the second most conservative member on the court if nominated. I've seen other people who say they're worried about the David Souter situation. I don't know, want to let it play out. Funny enough, outside of some topical issues, which I know he's previously ruled that I think, in opinion or given opinions that I think are my opinions, namely, the idea that illegal immigrants don't necessarily immediately have certain, rights that one would presume that they have in the lefty circles. That was a good one. There was another decision or opinion he had, which was essentially that the president can fire whomever he wants in the executive branch, up to and including special prosecutors,
which is also true.
Which also scares the shit out of the lefties because their little favorite hobby horse could go away. In theory, obviously he's by certain indications he doesn't seem entirely, happy with the ruling of Roe versus Wade. In fact, was supportive of the dissent in that decision. So that's good. So he certainly has signs of being a good boy on a number of key issues for me. But I'll tell you the truth, at the end of the day, and this sounds so petty, but honest to God, a lot of it is true for me. I can't deny it. I was very happy he was a Catholic that was nominated to the court.
Yeah.
The court to this day, is, and people really should understand why I think this is interesting. The court is exclusively populated by Jews and Catholics. In other words, the two most judgmental religions in the West, arguably, are the chief judges of the land. So I'm happy with that. And
but Sotomayor is
Sotomayor is the only, shall we say, challenge to the rule, which is the Catholics tend to be the conservatives and the Jews tend to be the liberals. Sotomayor is the only mistake on that front. Hence why the church in Latin America, I've said, has always been a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
It's neither here nor there. But that's always of interest to me, and I do think the Catholic leanings of the church, like I said, outside of Sotomayor, do give you some indication of how they're going to, position themselves. I think people might say that Gorsuch is not Catholic. He was raised Catholic. He's only going to a Protestant church because his wife is a Protestant. You don't leave the church, baby. No one ever leaves the church unless you are really hardcore. Unless you're nailing your theses on the door, you haven't left.
Yeah. It's sort of like the mafia. Where do you think the mafia gets its rules of omerta and so forth and so on?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, but look, about to wind down the Kavanaugh thing. I think that as the left criticizes him and tries to throw him under the bus, ineffectively, because the Republicans are just out in force. I mean, every conservative group is like, he's our guy, because he really is a lovable guy. Okay, I mean, the Family Guy issue and the fact that he seems to be very, very smart, but very judicious, makes him an easy guy to defend. Apparently, the biggest piece of dirt that they've been able to get on Kavanaugh is that back in 1997, he mouthed but did not say the word bitch at an image of Hillary Clinton. Okay.
Which just makes him a normal human being.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I mean, if that's the biggest sin that this guy's got, then the guy is, he's squeaky clean, okay? He's untouchable. And the more they try to touch him, the more they try to pull a bullet in his, a figurative bullet in his prospects, the worse the left is going to look like, and the worse they're going to lose in November. I mean,
right.
I think that's
fair. But the only thing that's making me nervous about him, ironically enough, is just how many people on the Republican side, broadly speaking, like him, even like weak milquetoast Republicans, never Trumpers, certain liberalish people, and even like middle of the road, like Doug Jones in Alabama even said, I can't say categorically I'd vote against him because he knows his fucking constituency. What's interesting to me in going to the signs of I don't know what he might do is the fact that so many people seem to like him worries me, because if people I hate like you, like you could still be the right guy, but if but it's just a warning sign to me. Could be nothing, but that's the only.
I think it's a warning sign. Okay, I mean, excuse me. I think it's nothing. Excuse me, not a warning sign. I think that it's nothing. I think that the guy, just his background, just the environment, the political environment in which he grew up. I mean, think about it. He was a White House counsel, and that's where he met his wife, who was a secretary to George W. Right, and oh man, and USA Today highlighted the fact in some tweet that they went on their first date on September 10th, 2001. Right.
I saw that. Yeah, the implication being like they plotted 9/11.
Yeah, I tweeted mockingly that. Yeah.
Okay, Pookie, get on the plane. We're gonna rock this bitch down.
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck, man? I mean, it's trivial. It's inconsequential. Lots of things happened on the 11th of September or the 10th of September of 2001 that mean absolutely nothing in the scheme of things. Wasn't Jonathan Franzen's corrections published on September 11th? Does that mean that Jonathan Franzen, caused the 9/11? Is that how we're going to play this game? It's fucking stupid,
No, but it was clearly one of the most amazing pieces of performance art book review I've ever seen. We hate this American literature so much, we are going to take down the founding pillars of American capitalism to spite him.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, it's like because they put up one of those fluff pieces, 5 things you didn't know about. I forget his first name, Kavanaugh, right? And what is his first name? It slips my mind.
Is it Brett? I don't know.
Yeah, Brett Kavanaugh. And 5 things you didn't know. But, it's a trivial thing that you would imagine, that he met that he went on his first date was on September 10th. I don't quite see how that's like, I don't know if that's even relevant or does it matter? It just, whatever, okay? But for them to tweet it out as the thing, I don't know. I think that they're going out of their fucking minds. I'm talking about the MSM, and the fact of the matter is that the fucking USA Today is going MSM retard. What the fuck? I mean, Jesus, I thought that the USA Today was sort of like a bulwark of normalcy. Even they're going, full SJW retard. Jesus.
Well, yeah, I'll give them some credit, and that doesn't mean I support them. I just simply understand them. I think they recognize because this guy is highly likely to be nominated unless, some really crazy shit happens. He will be, like I said, especially on the key issues that, like I had mentioned, he probably will be a force who could potentially challenge the precedent of some of their key hot button issues, which they think would never go away. Roe versus Wade is clearly the one on top of their minds. I think certain degrees of gun rights may be another one, and hot button issues like that. So I get that. I get why they're nervous about it. I get why they'll say all the crazy shit they can. Truth of the matter is, there's nothing they can do about it outside of, like I said, some weird shit happens, or it turns out Brett Kavanaugh has like the bodies of 12 boys in his basement, which he has which he's pickled since 1986.
Yeah.
To which I would respond, wow, that takes a lot of effort.
It takes a lot of discipline, man. How did he find the time to do all this good shit, and help the homeless and pickle the little boys that he murdered? Huh. Very industrious Matt. Yeah. No, kidding aside, of course. I wanted to highlight something else that I don't know if I mentioned this to you in a previous podcast, but it's been weighing on my mind more and more. If Hillary had won, right now, this would be the second justice that she had put on the court. And so right now, if this justice were going in, the liberals would have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. Okay? Think about that. Think about that fucking little tidbit, the fact that Hillary Clinton did not become president substantially altered the shape of the Supreme Court for the next, 20 years at least, and as it seems likely that Trump will win re-election in 2020, and he's probably going to have 2 more cracks at it. He's going to possibly have a 7-2 conservative majority, as opposed to an 8-1 liberal majority that Hillary would have delivered to the Supreme Court, because that what's her name, Ruth Bader, would have. Well, yeah, she's a liberal, so she would have been replaced.
Countdown to Ruth time is what I've been saying for a long time.
No, but if Hillary had been president, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have retired early to ensure that Hillary got a crack at replacing her. So it would be another liberal. So it wouldn't be 8-1; it would be 7-1, right? I'd have to go through the list, but
there was a good chance it could have been at least 6-1. And
what do you mean 6-1? You mean
sorry, 6-3.
No, it would be 6-3 now. Okay, because let's consider William Kennedy a liberal, and who was replaced the last time? Who was the who did Gorsuch replace? It slips my mind.
He replaced Scalia because Scalia.
Oh, right. Because it was postponed. Right. Sorry, my mistake.
Well, Kennedy is a flip vote. Kennedy is a lot like how Sandra Day O'Connor was. So the fact that he willingly resigned under Trump's terms suggests that he was open to and okay with that. So that could have been a net gain for the liberals for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a net. Obviously, Scalia had died, so it would have absolutely been a net gain for the liberals. But let's say Kennedy, perchance, said, "No, I'm going to hold on at least.
Mm-hmm.
I won't retire." That would have been. It still would have given the 5-4 majority, because you would have replaced Scalise, who was a hardcore.
Yeah. So like I was saying, yes, I had forgotten how I made the math, but yeah, now it would be a 6-3 liberal bench. I mean,
which should be the albatross you hang across the neck of every never Trumper who ever speaks his mouth again.
Yeah. Because my thinking is, Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment: never speak ill of a fellow Republican. Yeah. I mean, once the nomination is decided, I shut the fuck up. I get behind the car and push it up the goddamn fucking hill. I mean, that's my mentality. I mean, look, when Trump got the nomination, I didn't like it. But fuck it, he's the guy. And fuck it, between Trump, who might be crazy, and Hillary, there's no question, because, Trump might be crazy, but Hillary's fucking evil. And did you hear that she's thinking about running in 2020? I pray that she does.
The last broadcast. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Then yeah. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Let's say it again. Let's hope she runs.
Please, Hillary. If you listen to the Coach and Benway podcast, we beg you. We will do anything. We will get down on our knees and do things that are horrifying to us on a moral and physical level, but which will give you great pleasure if you guarantee that you will run in 2020. Please.
Well, you sound like a bunch of racist deplorables, but I like your gumption.
Did she ever say that word? I like your gumption.
Of course, she would read anything that's given to her. I'm sure she said gumption or the cut of your jib
Well,
or
I
anything.
actually use the word gumption. I think it's a good word. I think that it's not used enough.
Add it to the lexicon. Let's do it.
Well, so anyway, okay, Gorsuch. What's the next piece of news that's going on right now?
Well, if you keep it in the terms of legal discussion, the other news that caught my eye, I think caught a number of people's eyes today, was a bill that went before the House. I think it went through the House. Yeah, it introduced last month, is getting more attention now because I think Mike Cernovich retweeted it. It's the Unmasking Antifa Act, which is a very interesting little piece of legislation. It's only like 2 pages, I think, 3 pages, but the gist of it is this. Under the act, anyone wearing a mask or in disguise who injures, oppresses, threatens, or intimidates any person in the free exercise or enjoyment of any rights or privilege would be subject to a fine or up to 15 years in prison. Yeah. I think the fine is Willie, milk. I don't like whenever someone can say, "Oh, I could just pay my way out of it." Yeah. I would love to see just the 15-year sentence, baby, and it's mandatory sentencing. Yeah, I would love that. And the liberals are also freaking the fuck out about that. Yeah, because they think it's specifically targeted at them, and they would be right. But it's a good thing.
Well, this law would make it a federal crime, and that's the interesting part. Okay, so automatically you get all sorts of very negative consequences for it being a federal crime, as opposed to some like local jurisdiction crime of like assault or something. It becomes a felony, even if it's a relatively minor assault. So the lock bike guy, bike lock guy, what's his name? Eric Clanton, who was that professor or pseudo professor who went and bashed somebody on the head, and the wonderful autism of the Chans figured out who the guy was. And because of that evidence, he got arrested and was found guilty. Well, that son of a bitch, he'd be liable to 15 years in prison, or what was the fine again? 15 grand?
I don't know what the fine was. I didn't read that, but some sort of fine. I'm sure it's trivial.
Yeah. No. It was substantial. Actually, I have it around here. No, I'm like, I'm down with this law. Fucking A. I mean, it's like you cannot. It's not merely a heckler's veto. It's the thug's veto. That's what it is. And I am completely in favor of the federal government stepping in and protecting essentially the Bill of Rights, because that's what we're talking about here. We are talking about thugs who are trying to silence people exercising their right to free speech.
Yes, and I would advise people to keep in mind what the tactic is that the left does, and why you should never treat the left as actually meaning anything of what it says. It's the left, especially they claim to be anti-fascist, but their fundamental modus operandi is might makes right. That's how you define their attitudes. The heckler's veto,
their actions. That's the funny thing, is that they keep saying that they're in favor of principles and bullshit like that, but their actions. Well, as like Gandhi said, actions express priorities, and their actions express the idea that might makes right, and that's what drives me fucking furious. These fucking hypocrites, and nobody ever calls them out on this hypocrisy. Ugh.
Well, as I said, they are, and this is very similar to how it was in the 20s and 30s. Actually, there's a famous line from Trotsky, I believe, where he says, the only thing you should acquaint, I forget the exact line, but the only thing you should acquaint the fascist to is his head to the pavement, namely, you should be violent towards them. And my response to Trotsky is, I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the pickaxe in your face. But that's that's neither here nor there. But the idea that, this is a identity level struggle between them and their other, namely some sort of fascist, however they want to define, is not new. It is not principle based. It is existential based, and they are fighting to win. And so I would suggest I like this law for 2 reasons. One, you can have the principle argument. You said fundamentally you're defending the freedoms of the Bill of Rights, which everybody loves. At the same time, you could also say, well, look, this is fighting fire with even better fire by saying, okay, you want to play your games, I will use my might and all the might and power of the federal government to destroy you.
Fuck
if I
you
need
up.
to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you win both ways, and I'm happy when you win both either way.
Yeah, by the way, the law also has a provision that if there's a destruction of property, you get automatic 2 years. The bill at this time, it doesn't specify the fine. It says, I'm quoting, shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 15 years or both. Yeah, I'm down with that. I hope that they get rid of the fined part and just make it just prison time. I think
that's my preference.
Yeah, and a
play
minimum.
the game with the fine.
A minimum. Not less than 24 months, because it is the attitude of the thug to mask yourself. Look, I don't have a problem with somebody deciding, fuck it, these fucking Nazis in Skokie, are going to be marching. I'm going to go down there and kick the shit out of them, right? Or even, these fucking Nazi Republicans, I'll go down there and kick the shit out of them. But show your fucking face. That's the thing. I mean, if you're going to do it. But be a man about it. Don't be a fucking pussy and hide behind a mask and then run away like a fucking bitch, right? And also, the other thing that happens to me insofar as Antifa is concerned, at least American Antifa, because the Europeans aren't like this, American Antifa, they don't know how to fucking fight. They are such pussies, Like the other day when the guy got knocked out, right? One punch and the guy got fucking brain damaged, right? What a fucking bitch. I mean, frankly, here's the thing. I don't know how to fight. Okay, I have not been in a street fight since I was, 20, no less. Frankly, I've forgotten, like 18, 17, something like that. I mean, I did get into scuffles. I remember one time I was in a rather big melee when I was like 16. When I was 16, I was trouble, right? But fuck it. I was never good at it. I got beat up and I also put in my licks. So, it was, a wash, if you will. But the thing is, see, my thinking was, if you're not going to do it well, or at least, have an honorable outcome, don't get in a fucking melee. Okay, don't be like a little, because you saw that guy waving around a stick, acting like all tough, and then a real tough guy shows up and just knocks him out. I don't know. I find that there's something that offends my sense of masculinity, that somebody's such a fucking loser like that. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, I noticed the way he was flinging the bike chain or whatever he was flinging.
No, it was a baton. Yeah, it was a rod or something.
A rod, whatever. It looked like it looked very
gay. Yeah, it
very
looked gay.
With it looked like he was using his techniques from like his BDSM.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of looked like. It's like, I don't want to hit you that hard.
Yeah.
But
give me your safe word. What's your safe word? Fucking
when you're
bitch.
on the street and some guy's flinging that thing at you, whether he's acting like a fruity guy or not, it doesn't really matter. You're just gonna give a very hard blow to the face.
Yeah.
And like I said, the funny thing was that the guy who was hit didn't even know how to fall properly. You fall in a way that does not result in your head getting cracked on the cement. And I'm pretty sure if you listen to that video, I could be wrong, I think you hear his head bunk right on the cement right after that. And that's the part that fucked him up. It wasn't even the punch per se.
No. It was, he didn't know how to take a punch. Yeah. And lots of guys get caught, by surprise by a punch. Shit, you see that all the time in the fights, right? That's not the issue of getting caught by surprise by a punch. The issue is, how can I put it? Just being such a fucking pussy, okay, like that. It's just being such a bitch and LARPing at being a tough guy, okay? And the cops that arrested that guy who knocked him out, who knocked out the Antifa guy, they one look at the video and you're free to go. Have a nice day, sir. And we were commenting about it before the show, and you were saying that the cops probably, gave him a high five.
Or basically said, hey, good, something to the effect of acknowledging a job well done.
Yeah, exactly.
Some cops it's hard to read, but others I think are going to be fine on that.
Yeah, I've always had a good relationship with cops because the cops, they just want to get the job done. They want to keep the peace. They don't want to hassle, and I can understand that. I can empathize. And they probably must have seen this and figured, oh, this little twerp got his ass handed to him. Good riddance to bad rubbish. You know what I'm saying? So no, I and the big guy who hit him, I saw him in some video somewhere. He seemed all right. He seemed like a normal guy. Big guy, nobody you fuck with.
I think there was an interview soon after where his face was all red from being maced, but he was still giving a particularly, not particularly, but like a decently cogent answer to everything. Seemed perfectly fine. So I thought to myself, guy, can confidently take mace to the face and still function. Obviously knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
At least
yeah.
on a physical level, I give him credit for
And
that.
there's the other obvious thing, man. When you see a guy who's obviously bigger, stronger, better built than you, I mean, the guy outclasses you. Know your fucking limitations, for crying out loud. Okay? I mean, there were lots of skinny ass fascists, quote unquote, there. Why did this fucking Antifa imbecile go after the big guy? The big guy who looked like he worked out like daily, at least an hour or two. The big guy who had like fucking huge biceps. Him, that was just stupid. I mean, my thinking also on a practical level. How do you, if you're going to go man to man, find somebody in your class, not somebody who obviously outclasses you. Anyway, enough of that shit. Because
he probably thought his baton, death march paraphernalia was going to do the trick, and little did he know that it's actually very easy to block a long weapon that isn't sharp. So,
well, I don't know if the guy is like seriously permanently brain damaged because of this.
I don't know one way or the other. I've heard rumors or stories to that effect. I've seen video to suggest something weird was happening, but beyond that, I don't know.
Listeners, if you find out, be so kind as to put in your comments what happened to the son of a bitch. And if you have like a video link, please put it in and we'll highlight it. I'll pin it up so that people can see, because I'm genuinely curious, to tell you the truth. And right now, while we're in the show, I can't like go looking for it. But okay, so anyway, what else is going on in the world apart from Antifa being lousy fighters?
The other little detail I saw, it's on Zero Hedge, I think, if you want to
Zero Hedge is our Bible. Is our Bible. It's the daily liturgy of apocalypse and right-wingdom.
My favorite story is that the new Mexican government, led by our wonderful socialist champion of the migrants of the world, has appointed a new leader and a new task force to be even stricter on the southern border of Mexico to control illegal immigration into Mexico. So I find that very amusing. I also find it very amusing that they explicitly said that they're trying to politically negotiate the complications that might ensue by the fact that the president of Mexico made comments about Trump for this very issue, which is a nice polite way of saying they don't want to be called hypocrites when they're being hypocritical.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's good for you, but not for me. That's what's basically going on. Yeah, because
that's been long going with Mexico too. For the longest time, the administration has been trying to control their southern border, which I believe is Belize and what is the El Salvador? I think are the two borders.
I don't know. Let me look it up real quick. But what I do know is that look, most people in America, when they look at Mexico or think of Mexico, they think of Mexico as just brown people who are like crossing the borders. But those are the poor people in Mexico. Okay. It's Guatemala.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't realize. Oh, yeah, it's Belize and Guatemala. I've never been to Central America. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Cancun, and Cancun ain't really Mexico, but close enough. But what you call it? As I was saying, that people in the United States, they have a misconception of what most Mexicans look like, and most Mexicans' lives and the Mexican economy, because they see the poor people in northern Mexico migrating into the United States. They don't realize that Mexico, not all of Mexico is like that, and there are huge cities. Mexico City, one of the largest, if not the largest city on the planet, that has huge middle classes that have ordinary jobs, just like people in the United States do, and they bitch about the commute, just like Americans do, and they have a perfectly wonderful and ordinary lives. And there are people in Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua who want a piece of that life in Mexico. Okay, and they have their immigrant problem too. Mexico is better off than Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. I'm looking at the map. That's how I'm able to reel off the names of these countries. But you see, all these countries, especially Nicaragua and Honduras, especially Nicaragua, which is a basket case, they're fleeing to Mexico to get work just as poor Mexicans are fleeing to the United States for work. Now, do keep in mind, see, the Mexicans fleeing Mexico, they really are the dregs because they can't even find a job in Mexico. So they are fleeing to the United States. Think of it. Would you, if you are poor and you are living in the United States, would you flee to a country that you don't really speak the language and you don't understand the rules at all? Would you flee to that country if in your own country you couldn't find something? Or you could find something, rather? Think about it. So the people exiting Mexico are really the bottom of the barrel. Okay, there is enough employment in Mexico for those people, but people in Mexico don't want them. Okay, and that's why people in Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua, they are fleeing to Mexico. They are economic migrants. It's not political refugees or any shit like that. It's economic migrants. They are looking to go there to get money so they can send back home to their families in these poorer countries. Okay, so they move to a less poor country, Mexico, where there are a lot of jobs. Okay, the people fleeing from Mexico today to the United States are not the best people. Trump is absolutely right. They're not the fucking doctors and engineers and software designers and shit. They're the bottom of the barrel because the doctors and engineers and stuff, they can get a job in Mexico, no problem. And nobody is going to flee their own country if they can get a job in their country. Why would you? Why would you leave all your friends and family behind if you could make a decent living in some country? Maybe not as good as in the United States, but good enough. You know what I mean? So,
do you think this is partly why, or partly an explanation as to why the Democrats are underperforming with the Hispanics in the United States recently? After Trump, they're underperforming. Not to say that the majority of Hispanics don't still vote Democrat, but they're not doing as well as they should be. And I think it's not unrelated to Trump's position on this matter. Could be from experience.
I don't know. That's actually an interesting question. I have to look at the data to be able to give an intelligent opinion. I don't know. That's really interesting.
That's my speculation. My speculation is Trump's support amongst Hispanics, to the degree it exists, is probably from the middle class to better Hispanics in the United States, who recognize what they're trying to get away from or what they want to separate themselves from, namely, you said, really lower end economic migrants and all of the shit that will be brought with them. As I said, the drug, be it a drug trade or just general no-goodery.
Yeah.
However you want.
General no-goodery. That's a good.
Because remember, think of it this way: like if you leave a shithole because you recognized it as a shithole, how would you feel if that shithole knocked on your door and said, "I'm your new neighbor"?
Yeah, exactly. No, well, look, the thing that happens is that the Latino immigrants in the United States, you can divide them into two broad groups, rough groups. You have a top tier that gets an education, starts the middle class, upper class climb. Okay, and there are lots of examples of those in Miami, in Florida. It's all over the fucking place. They are the people who just put their shoulder to the wheel and just push it up the hill, And, those people quickly become Republicans because they don't want to lose their shit, right? And then you have a larger swath that they don't quite know how to get on the economic ladder, okay? They don't know, or they're simply unable to because of lack of inherent talents, not because of lack of possibility, okay? I dispute that. Because the United States, compared to any country in Central and South America, and I can speak from experience on this, the United States is much easier to get on the ladder. Okay, there are some countries where it's very difficult to get on the ladder and climb to middle class and upper middle class prosperity. The United States is exceptionally easy. There are signposts and stepping ladders to get onto that ladder. Okay. It's not an impossible task for an immigrant. That's why you see in the United States so many Vietnamese immigrants. We were talking about it when we were talking about the Vietnam War and the Ken Burns documentary. So many Vietnamese immigrants, who did exceptionally well in the United States. And they climbed that ladder because the signs were all there. It was really clear. It's like a big... those big bright exit signs, you see in every building, right? That's easy to find where the exit is when there's a fire going or whatever. Well, the opposite, the big fat red enter here sign for social mobility. In the United States, it's very, very easy. And in other countries, and in other countries in Latin America, let's face facts, some of those doors are deliberately closed by the people who are already middle class or upper middle class. They don't want anybody else to join for whatever reason, because basically they want to protect their own position. That, for example, is one of the reasons that I love Pinochet, and I don't have a problem saying it, because he opened that door for people to accede to the middle and upper middle classes in Chile after the Allende government, right? And that was one of the great things about his dictatorship that his critics will never concede, but which is key. It's key, the notion of real social mobility, that sense that you really can move up the socioeconomic ladder. In Latin America, in many countries, you do not have that. In a lot of countries, they deliberately try to shut that down, okay? Argentina is a perpetual basket case, economically, financially, and all the rest of it, because even though it's a perpetual basket case, there is a sense that you can rise in Argentina. But in other countries, and because of that, even though it is an economic basket case, there is rarely a revolution in Argentina, like a revolution, because the social strains are not there in Argentina. But in other countries, like Nicaragua, for example, yeah, they have this all the time, because you have the middle classes and upper middle classes. They are, crossing the drawbridge and immediately trying to pull it up behind them so that nobody else can join them. Okay, and you see this all over Latin America and Central and South America, especially between the tropics. Okay, the countries between the tropics, because I would say that in Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile, you don't really have this for whatever reason. But you do have it in Bolivia and Peru. Oh man, Peru, it's unbelievable. There is just, until recently, it's actually a little bit not so true anymore. But I'm going on a rant here.
Did I ever tell you that from the 18th century there was a climate theory of civilization?
Oh, what was that?
The climate theory of civilization, which I think you've almost somewhat articulated, was that in the cooler climates, environs of Europe in particular, this is when it was being written, you have more industrious folk because the weather is more conducive to, comfortable living or labor-inducive work that, wouldn't, sweat your fucking brains out. And because there were seasons, you had time for contemplation. You had, more rigorous activity. There was an industrialness that gets facilitated in the population. You go to the warmer environs like southern Italy or Greece or Spain, what have you. The theory was, there's a heat in the climate that makes everything all sweaty and moist and gregarious, and then you're prone to like lasciviousness and sex and.
I would say that there's something to that. I would say that there's something to it. Look, we are affected by tiny changes in our environment, and in the aggregate, in the millions of people, those tiny changes become huge, right? Yeah. So there's something there. There's something to that. I don't doubt it at all. Okay. I don't think it's so clear cut, because there are some regions that are climates that are hot, like Japan, for instance. There are areas of Japan that are very hot, and that clearly they have a tremendous civilization and tremendous culture. So I'm not so sure. But yeah, there's something there. Look, it seems absurd to believe that climate does not influence people. Climate, the gravitational pull of the moon, there's something to it. Okay, it is absurd to think that our environment does not influence our behavior. I cannot think of any way reasonable to deny that self-evident fact. I mean, do you?
Well, I guess even in little lines that I love in literature and news, it kind of underlines the fact that there's a good Hunter S. Thompson line. He says, I never liked Nevada, I think it's Nevada or Las Vegas. I've never been able to properly express myself in this climate. I think there is truth to that. And I know it from my own life. I can handle colder climates. I can still function very easily. As soon as it's hot, moist, sultry, all of that kind of stuff, and I need the air just in order to function, I know I can't do anything
Yeah.
or process anything appropriately under those conditions. So
Yeah.
imagine being in that situation day in and day out.
Yeah, I mean, like in my own case, I know that I operate best when it's slightly chilly, when it's a little bit cold, you know, not a lot, just a couple of degrees too quite not optimal. When it's optimal, I just relax, you know, I relax, I sort of like dither, I just like, you know, I don't really focus on work. When it's just a little bit cold, when I turn the AC down just a couple of degrees below optimal, then, you know, things get done. And when it's hot, fuck it, forget it. I'm just not, you know, when I'm sweating and something like that, I can't really think of anything. I don't handle heat. That's why, like in my own personal vacations, I prefer to go skiing. You know, if I have like a couple of weeks, wherever there's snow, I'll be there. You know what I'm saying? Like, if all goes well, I'm hoping to go in August, go skiing to Argentina. And yeah, because hell yeah, you know, because between the hot, here's the thing, my thinking. See, there is a finite amount of clothes that you can take off in the heat before there's nothing left to take off, right?
Right.
But in the cold, you can put on an infinite amount of warm gear, right? So which is better, you know? I don't know. Perhaps not a very very clever line or thought or profound.
No,
thought,
no,
but
it's essentially true.
yeah,
You know, I always the reason I bring that up is because I remember that was another manifestation of what you would get whenever you look back on the Enlightenment,
uh-huh.
and you would get sort of pomo critics of it. They would highlight things like that. It's like, well, they had things like the climate theory of intelligence and human development, which clearly we know subsequently is utterly supportable. So, you know, and I was laughing at that because I think to myself, well, you know, there's probably some truth to it that you're just,
Yeah,
denying for ideological reasons.
yeah, it's like, for instance, people deny. Oh, what's the thing about face? The study of faces to determine moral characteristics.
Oh, I don't know the exact name, but I know what you're talking about.
Phonology. What was the name? Not phrenology. Phrenology is the study of the skulls, right? Anyway, it's becoming increasingly clear that faces do reveal certain moral characteristics of people. Perhaps not in the individual, it's not 100% accurate, but in an aggregate sense, it is most definitely accurate. And yeah, people like have a thing about that, and they refuse to accept the truth of it. And I find it funny. I find it funny that they refuse to accept obvious, self-evident truths for the sake of their tabula rasa bullshit, because that's what it is. This notion of the tabula rasa, that breeding does not influence you, which is ridiculous. Breeding does influence you. Your genes influence you. And it's distasteful perhaps, but the whole notion of a tabula rasa for me, it is absurd because it's basically positing that human beings are above every other living creature. Because in every other living creature, you can tell the difference between different strains, different breeds. Look at horses. I mean, you know, look at ponies and thoroughbreds, the difference between the two. They're both horses. They can mate with one another and have offspring. They are genetically the same species, no question about it. But, you know, on the one hand, you have a thoroughbred. And that thoroughbred can run, I don't know how fast thoroughbred horses run, 30 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour. A pony, you know, is going to trot at most at 5 miles an hour, right? The size, the sheen of their coat, everything, you know, even the glint in their eye. There is a qualitative difference between the two. There is better breeds and lesser breeds, or not better breeds and lesser breeds. There are more optimal breeds, or not even that. That's not correct. There are breeds that have qualities that are more beneficial to a given environment. Let's put it like that, okay? Because, like, you know, the little the Mongols, right? The horses, the ponies that the Mongols had, the Mongol hordes had, they were like ponies of today. They were like little horses, little stout little horses. Because we think of them as European forest horses. And no. They were like these stout little guys, stout little horses, really hairy. And they were really tough, small, compact little horses. And those were the horses of the Mongol hordes, right? And it seems sort of laughable until you realize that, you know, it was like a few thousands of these Mongol archers on these little ponies shooting arrows as they all, thundered towards you, then it was not so fucking funny, now was it? But the point I'm trying to make, there is a difference and in breeds among animals. So it is absurd to think that among people there are no such differences, and that some breeds are more optimal in certain conditions, environmental conditions, be it social conditions or physical environment conditions, social environment conditions or physical environment conditions. And at this point in time, there are some subgroups of Homo sapiens sapiens who are more optimal, who are just better, for lack of a better word. And
So on that front, how do you think the new socialist leader of Mexico is going to handle the subbreeds of Latin America coming into the South? Do you think
not gonna let him in?
He's funny? You should say that. Even though we're having our fun at racial theories, I think at the end of the day, I look at it this way. And people say I'm crazy for thinking this, but I think it's possible. I even said it in our episode about the Mexican election.
Mm-hmm.
There are enough issues of overlap between this socialist leader of Mexico and Trump to where I do think there is a slight but real possibility that they can come to some sort of understanding on issues that actually people on the right wing might be okay with.
Yeah, I think that they'll definitely come to some sort of deal because they have similar problems.
Exactly. That's my thinking. I think, I know we bemoaned the socialist for sure. But like I said, the more I look at him, the more I think, he ain't getting any real socialism. But it'll be interesting to see how he plays this immigrant business. Could go either way, but I think there's enough to say, let's watch it.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty interesting. Yeah, because, this socialist president, right? He actually ran Mexico City. Now, Mexico City is a fucking huge metropolis. How many people does it have? 11 million at this point or something like that?
I think it is the biggest city in the world, but I don't know in numbers what that means, though.
Yeah, I thought that Tokyo was the biggest one. And just so people know, it's 8.85 million people, according to the United Nations, in 2010. So it's probably larger now. How big is Tokyo?
Tokyo's bigger, I think.
Yeah,
let me check.
Tokyo's 9.27 million. Yeah, so it is.
It also depends on if they're talking about city limits or or the metropolis area, which are different ways.
They're fucking enormous. It doesn't matter, But the point is that, see, if he was running Mexico City, he knows the problems of a big political territory, and the different factions and the different people and the different everything and the different problems that crop up. Okay, so he's not going to be one of these babe in the woods socialists. He's not going to be a fucking Justin Trudeau. By the way, have you been following that whole shit show?
Oh, why did he abuse a woman and now he's saying no, she didn't get it right? Or what did he say? I don't know. Yeah. Something to that effect.
Yeah, oh man, he's just...
He should listen and believe is what he should do.
Yeah, he should listen and believe. And what does that say about him? Well, shouldn't we listen and believe his accuser and, kick him to the curb because of it? Oh man!
All I can think of him these days is when he was dressed up in that Indian getup and he was doing his fucking dancing routine, and everybody said, "What the fuck is happening to this man?" Yeah. I am interested in the Canadian elections. Let's just say about that. But Canada is a broken country, so he could still win again.
Yeah. What I love is the fake eyebrows. I just. Because I've been looking at his pictures really fucking close. He does wear fake eyebrows. You can tell. Look at a picture of him. Go to Google Justin Trudeau, and look for a high def picture of him, right? Go to the images. I'm doing it now as I'm speaking. Go to tools, and go to size, and pick large, right? And just get a close-up, any close-up of the guy, and look at his picture, okay? And actually, it's even better when you go to larger than and you ask for 4 megapixels, right? You will see, he definitely
has an eye toupee.
Yeah, has an eye toupee. That is just fucking weird. And he also has a little band on his wrist. Jesus, that's sad. For a while, I wore a band on my wrist, actually 3 bands. Okay, there were these leather straps that I got. It had the names of my kids because we went to some fair in Chile, right? And my kids found them and they thought they were so cool. and they wanted me to wear them, and I was like, okay, well, I'll put them on. When am I going to deny at the time a 3 and a 1.5 year old? Of course not. So I wore them for a while. I was mildly embarrassed, but it was my kids. I mean, they really had forced me. It wasn't like out of like vanity. But this guy has a gold chain. I don't think his kids are telling him to do that. But anyway, check out the pictures. He's got like eyebrow things. Okay, well, I'm looking at two pictures now. Here,
It's funny as you're doing this. I've looked at the eyebrow toupee falling off, and I've always laughed. But as naturally is the case with internet searching, I find myself scrolling to those pictures, which are try to superimpose Trudeau's face with Castro's, and I simply must say, it's very convincing.
no, I don't. I don't buy that. I think it's just.
He doesn't look like his father.
Yeah, he does. When Justin, well, he looks like his mother, frankly. And his mother was a fucking. I mean, that woman is fucking insane, right? I mean, like really insane, like clinically, you know. Yeah, doing all kinds of crazy ass shit. No, I think that. No, I think that he there is an air of Pierre to him. It's that we think of Pierre when he was older, but you look at Pierre pictures of Pierre when he was young, and yeah, there's something definitely there. But the difference between the two, man. I mean, shit. I've seen interviews with Pierre Trudeau, and the fucker was on the ball. I mean, yeah, he was a fucking commie, but he wasn't a fucking idiot, and he didn't tolerate any kind of unlawfulness or disorder. He was a law and order kind of guy.
Well, especially when, for those who don't know, there was a period of time when the Quebecois were actually really violent extremists willing to get the fuck out of Canada by any means necessary. And Trudeau, who was French, French Canadian in ancestry, so basically in the Canadianist kind of way, says, well, if they're going to try something, they're going to find out what it's all about or something like that. Like he really was like, fuck with them. Fuck them. I will, fire on them if necessary.
Yeah. He basically said, he put his foot down and said, don't fuck with me or I'll fuck you up bad. And he did, and good on him. Yeah, but he was a fucking socialist. Anyway, I fundamentally think that there are some national leaders who fundamentally hate their own country. And I suspect that Pierre is like that. Justin Trudeau is just a fucking idiot. He's just a puppet. He's a nobody. But I think that like people like Merkel, like Pierre Trudeau, fundamentally.
Pierre would have loved to have been in charge of something as big as the United States, no question.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's the other thing. Yeah, he was a man who had the talent and the drive to have been, in a bigger chair. And I think it pissed him off that he was basically, an appendage of the United States, But because that's what Canada is. Canada is, America's hat.
It's America's hat. I mean, it's a big geographic country, but literally, people probably overestimate how many people really are in Canada.
There's nobody. It's fucking empty.
It's like, what is it, like 20s? I'll look it up right now. 39, population 39 million. The person per square foot is ratio is off the charts low, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I've driven through Canada. In when was it, 2001? I did this big tour. It was basically a how long? 8 months tour. I basically drove all around the North American continent. I started from New York City, and I drove up to Toronto, and then from Toronto around the Great Lakes, across the Canadian Great Plains, and to Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary. Calgary, it was Edmonton and then Calgary. And then I drove up all the way to Yellowknife, which is the northernmost town you can drive to, because anything further north you have to go by plane, frankly. And then I crossed the Rockies on the Yukon Highway and into Alaska, and I saw the whole fucking country. The only thing I didn't visit was Montreal and Vancouver, but I wasn't really interested in cities because cities are just cities. And today, especially with globalization, all cities are basically the same. They got the same fucking things all over the goddamn place, so it's no fun. But insofar as the Canadian countryside, I saw a lot of it. I remember driving through Winnipeg, right? I'm driving through it, and it's fucking cold. I mean, it's just, it's winter, right? it's fucking cold, and it hadn't snowed yet, or it had snowed. I forgot, but it seemed pretty clear, right? But I'm driving, it's freezingly cold, right? And I mean, I have the heater on. I was driving a Land Rover. I had the heat on full blast, and it was just like not enough, right? And I see this. There's nobody around. I mean, absolutely nobody. And Winnipeg is one of those weird, Midwestern cities or Great Plains cities that's really spread out for some reason. I don't quite understand it. I mean, so goddamn cold. Why don't they have everything like closer together, grouped together? But no, it's all like spread out, right? It's all spread out, and I'm driving through it. There is nobody on the sidewalks. I'm talking nobody, and this is like noon, right? There is, well, actually, it was noon, and I'll explain why. I'm driving through, and there is this hamburger spot, and there are people, bundled up in cold, all of them freezing, and they're standing in line at this hamburger joint. I fucking stopped, of course, and because if you see, in some freezing town where it's like fucking minus 10 below centigrade or Fahrenheit, doesn't matter, if it's that fucking cold, and there are people standing in line for a hamburger, it's got to be fucking good. And it was VJ's Burger. It was really fucking good. It was worth it. It was worth the stop. That's my little Canadian story.
Well, what's great about Canada is just how much of the country is unspoiled by Canadian presence.
Jesus.
But Canada really does have. Sorry to Canadian listeners. I know there's some good ones of you, but you don't send your best to your own country. You don't send your best. But there's so much of it is like the worst mixture of American and British culture. It's it's like take American. Shall we say? I forget the right word I'm looking for here, but like American navel gazing with British moral superiority, and you get a Canadian, and I'm being too mean to them. But the thing about Canada, like I said, there's just so much of it that is very exotic is probably the right word. Just it's the untamed wilderness land of to those of you who are interested in the great outdoor stories, of the horror stories, in fact, of guys like Algernon Blackwood, who wrote The Wendigo. That's that mystical raw land is Canada, and like I said, the best part of it is that there are no Canadians around it to spoil it for you.
No, that was the weird thing about driving through Canada, is it's so empty. It's such an empty land. You drive, I mean, I drove through, like, I would be driving for miles and miles, and there's nothing. I remember driving on the road to Yellowknife. At one point I had to take a ferry, I think, and then it was like a 2-hour drive to Yellowknife. And I'm going down the road, and there is nothing and nobody, and no car passed in the opposite direction, right? And I remember I'm driving and driving and driving, and then there's this guy walking by the side of the road. I stopped. I told him, he wanted a ride, and yeah, he was going to Yellowknife, so I took him for the rest of the trip. And I forget what we talked about, but the point I'm trying to make is that it was just like, it's just this huge empty land. In a way that Alaska didn't, well, it felt equally empty, just a big piece of land that's just fucking empty, But in Alaska, it was weird because you'd go to Alaska into the wilderness, and you'd see little signs here and there that there had once been human presence, that somebody had done something, like a human had done something. But in Alaska, and in Canada rather, there was this real vibe that you could be driving past something, and no human had ever been there. No human had ever done any activity there. It was kind of creepy, because we feel as if the whole globe, with so many of us, fucking 7 billion of us, and we've had a history of at least 8,000 years, that we would have, marked pretty much every territory, at least pissed on every scrap of land on the face of this earth. But in Canada, you felt that there was still stuff that was truly empty. But more to the point, there was a sense that there was no reason to go there. Why would you bother? There was just fucking nothing,
People tend to underestimate how concentrated the human population really is.
Yeah.
I mean, there is large swaths of untamed land everywhere that humans just don't venture into. Like you said, even the hint that we pissed there really isn't there. Canada is probably one of those big frontiers. a large swaths of the American West are frankly just nobody goes there. That is literally flyover. The sections of Utah, Colorado, Nevada, Montana, all of that shit. It's just Rocky Mountain. So that there is something. We're really going off on a tangent on this one, but there is something nice about that from time to time if you want to explore it and you want to see that unspoiled land.
Yeah. I once heard a meme. I don't know if it's true or not. That everything built by man, every human invention, every human article, every building, everything could be packed into the Grand Canyon. I thought that was. I don't know if that's actually true or not.
Yeah, I ultimately don't know, but it sounds like I could be convinced of it.
Yeah, yeah. The Grand Canyon is a pretty big gash in the Earth, right? But insofar as the entire planet is concerned, it's relatively nothing. And to think that everything that human beings have built, all of the material constructed by human beings, because a lot of it is air. I mean, look at a building, for instance, right? The building I'm sitting in right now as I'm doing this podcast, right? It's mostly air. It's a big box, but if you compressed all the concrete and rebar of the thing, it doesn't. It's a 19-story tower, right? But if you compressed all of the actual material, all the glass, concrete, rebar, and all the rest of it, I doubt if it would be more than a story tall. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that makes sense. Ditto with a car. I mean, you've seen a compacted car, right? A compacted car compared to an actual a non-compacted car, if you will. It's kind of shocking how small a compact car is. How when they squash it into a little cube, it's really nothing. So maybe that is the case. I don't know. If any listener knows about that meme, if it's true or not, again, please post a link. We'd be delighted to do a follow-up on that.
And as a concluding note, I suggest everybody should take a test to see how much you can compact yourself into the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, all your stuff. How many cubic feet of material do you possess? If you can compact it all, how many cubic feet would that do? And we'll try to extrapolate like the human.
What is your Grand Canyon footprint? That's what
That's a good one. Yeah, I like it. And so on that cheerful note, this is Coach Red Pill, and this has been the Coach and Benway podcast, and I'm bidding you a fond farewell. Take it easy.
Later.